What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you. Unexpected guest, but we made things work relatively quickly because he is a true professional in the industry. And you probably will recognize his voice from Madden games in the past. It is the one, the only Tony Bruno.
Hello there from the beautiful from Redwood City, California. It is.
Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Daniels and the Charlie Daniels
Band. No, that's Charlie Daniels and the Charlie Daniels Band. He's not performing tonight. He passed away earlier.
You really entered with the jokes that quickly.
Well, no, actually, I opened my feed, and all of a sudden I heard music. I thought you were playing that, Ryan, and it happened to be. It was actually a meme of Charlie Daniels somehow popped up on my Twitter feed. So I apologize for that. I shut it off. I thought you were playing that.
Well, let's talk about your Twitter feed, because if anybody knows, over the weekend, there was a little Twitter trend about fix Madden franchise. And guess whose name repeatedly comes up in these conversations when it comes to franchise depth and things we love to hear in our Madden game?
Let's see. John Madden?
No.
Well, when I did it back in 05, 06, and 07, I would go into the same studio, Ryan, with the man who was doing the play-by-play during that era, back in 05, 06, and 07, when he was doing the Sunday Night Football on NBC, Al Michaels. So Al Michaels was recording the play-by-play portion of 05, and I was there in the same studio waiting for Al to get done, and I would go in and do my part in the franchise mode that they established back in 05, 06, and 07. So that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it's certainly something that I'm proud of, and a lot of people ask me, what's going on and how did you get this? They called me. I'm doing radio in Los Angeles on Fox Sports Radio on the morning show, and I got a phone call from the folks at EA Sports, and they said, hey, we want to do a new feature. Would you be interested? And what was I supposed to say? No, I don't think so. You better look for somebody else. So it was an honor. They called me, and I did a 3-year contract, and we did the franchise mode, and it was a lot of fun. And people still remember. There's a lot of people now in their 30s who, were teenagers back then, 15 years ago, who were like, wow, I grew up listening to you. And I remember when you were in the game. And it's amazing, Ryan, that so many people know me only from the Madden game and don't know me from my radio career. And there's a lot of people from my radio career who don't know me from the Madden game. So that's the great thing about being involved in so many different parts of our business, whether it's radio, TV, sports, you name it. Somebody, when you've been around as long as I have, they're going to say, hey, I know you from somewhere, at least.
Well, I was blessed to know you both in the game and obviously in our radio here, where you've been a fixture in Philadelphia for a very long time. Can you talk a little bit about if you were to enter this marketplace again? Because that's what a lot of people, as you said, brought up is we want Tony Bruno back. You added a lot to the game. You added an element, to be fair, in one of the most boring aspects of the game. You brought an excitement, a passion, a love. It was more than just something to listen to in the background. People genuinely were excited about the full radio show. Could you talk a little bit about how that process was and if you would ever entertain that idea again?
Well, obviously I would. I mean, the good thing about the folks at EA Sports is that, they're geniuses. When I sat in there and did my 2 hours a day, because the one thing people don't know, Al Michaels and I, we could only do 2 hours of recording in one session. And that's the way they wanted to do it, to keep you fresh, because a lot of the stuff is actually tedious, and the geniuses at EA and all of the tech people put it together electronically. So I'm in a studio. I'll give you an example. A couple of sessions, we did 56 hours of recording. So that's 2-hour sessions going back a couple of times a week. And it took over a month just to record my part. Same thing with Al Michaels. And so we had to say the name of every single player in the NFL with 3 different inflections. And so that was some of the process. And then the coach interviews. I didn't actually interview the coaches that were in the game. So they were interviewed by one of the staff people at EA. And then the coaches were told that I would be doing the interview. And since I knew most of these coaches, they said, okay. So they always respond, okay, Tony, well, Tony. And so all of that stuff was pre-recorded. So I would throw to these interviews pre-recorded, and it sounded organically, like I was talking to the coach live. So I give the credit to the people at EA. I just went in there and did my thing, used my personality, and had a lot of fun doing it. And the end result was people seemed to like that because it was a new idea. It was fresh. And so will they do it again? I don't know. I'm not the one lobbying EA Sports to put me back into the game. I see those guys every year when I go to the Super Bowl. You know, they're great people, and we're still friends. So there's no, oh, my God, I'm going to badmouth EA because they haven't called me to put me back in the game. I mean, if they wanted to, I would be perfectly happy to do it again. It was a lot of fun. It was, of all the things I've done in my career, and I've done a lot of things, it's probably the one that I'm most proud of because of the amount of work that went into it and the fact that it came out and the finished product was so awesome. But again, as I said, most of it goes to the people at EA Sports and the technical wizards who put that stuff together.
Did they ever express to you why, after that 3-year contract, they were not going to go back and try to capture more from you? Because to be fair, the whole process literally fell off. They started to implement some other things with visual aspects like the NFL Network coverage, but then they completely went away from any type of outside, whether it was radio, whether it was television, that whole aspect of the game where there's a living world outside of the actual environment is completely gone now. So did they ever express to you why there wasn't going to be a continued commitment?
No, when I signed a contract, their commitment was, we're going to do it for 3 years. We always like to stay fresh. So it wasn't one of those, hey, let's do 3 years and we'll take it from there. Their plan was to do the radio show for 3 years. That's what I agreed to. That's what they agreed to. They were happy with it. And so I don't think it was a question of after 3 years, it jumped the shark. It was time to move on. I think they're always looking for new things to implement into the games. And the one part, now you got to go remember, we're talking 15 years ago. So you look at how technology has changed. And there's probably no way they could do it again the way they did it. It's so labor intensive. I think they're probably utilizing, and I'm not a technical expert, I'm sure they're utilizing other ways to keep the stuff sounding fresher by using fresher stuff that's recorded on a weekly basis, as opposed to rerunning stuff that was recorded in the middle of a summer through an entire football season.
You realize you have people that watch my channel screaming at their computer, because I know from the outside, Tony, that's what you would think, but the exact opposite takes place. There literally is nothing. There's no banter. In fact, we often say that the in-game commentary is very repetitive. So if you thought the game advanced after you left, you were like one of the last great things there before the whole thing went off a cliff.
Well, I appreciate the compliments, Ryan, but it's not about the game advancing. I'm saying technology is advanced. Back then, we recorded in studios for 56 hours to put our part into the game electronically. Nowadays, they can upload things all the time. And back then, there wasn't an online presence. When you played Madden, whether in any of the formats, it was something that was already there. You didn't have to log on. You never went to an internet site to get the freshest, latest material. And so that's the advantages I'm talking about. Technologically, they can do so much more with games, which is why when people play games online now, the access to the information is instant. You're not relying on something that was recorded a few years ago. And so, again, I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it again if they asked me to, but I'm saying I don't know as far as technologically whether or not the ability to do it that way is still logical.
I guess the next question would be the logical one. Did you ever play the game afterwards just to hear your parts and all that hard work you put in kind of shine through in that final product?
Well, yeah, it's funny. People ask me all the time, you play it all the time. I love playing Madden, but I wasn't an expert at it. And so the fact that I would go to Super Bowls, and I would go to Super Bowls for the Madden Bowl, and I wasn't even invited. I'd have to call them and say, hey. But the first couple of years I was on there, they had me in all the magazines that cover video games. They interviewed me, and it was awesome. I mean, it was an unbelievable experience. I wouldn't say I'm a video game expert or a Madden expert. There's tournaments all the time. I've shown up at some. I hang out, and I'm always grateful when somebody remembers me from the games. And so that's an honor for me. But as far as, do I think I can make the game better? Are there a lot of other radio people that could do it? Absolutely. I saw a lot of the posts on there, and I'm sure a lot of people thought that I was the guy who's trying to beat my own drum to get back into the Madden games. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. As I said, they contacted me. They know who I am. They know where I am. And so if they wanted to do it again, I'd be perfectly happy. But I saw on the thread on Twitter a lot of people say, nah, Tony Bruno, bring in, Colin Cowherd. And these are all my friends and people that I've worked with. So I'm not going to sit there and say, they shouldn't get Colin Cowherd if they wanted to, or they shouldn't get Stephen A. Smith or anybody else that they threw out there, or Shannon Sharp. There's so many great people in this business, that can add a lot to the game. So as I mentioned, being picked as the first radio guy to actually be in franchise mode was quite an honor. And, no one will ever be able to say I was the very first guy in Madden that was a radio show inside the game. So I don't know if they're going to continue it, if they're going to bring it back, they're going to go a different direction. But again, that's what I think. That's why Madden has lived so long and has always been so successful and the most successful sports video franchise in history, because does it get old? To some people it does. But the one thing that they do is they always try to add something new and innovative every single year. So you can't fault them for that.
Well, we can fault them for a lot of things, but I will say the interesting part of that conversation is a lot of what gamers want is that connection to the games they had before. And that's, I think, why you saw such a strong presence for you. It wasn't just the radio show. It's the familiarity of your voice, your tone. And to be fair, if we had you back in Madden or any other game, which we'll get into in just a moment, we know, if nothing else, it would be done, quote unquote, right. So I think that's where a lot of people, you're right, not to beat your own drum or anything to that regard, but a lot of people simply wanted you because I guess for us, you're the safest pick. We know what you're going to bring. We know you're going to deliver, and we know you're a professional. At least I do. I listen to you constantly on the radio for at least 5 years when I worked in Philadelphia, and it never got old any day. But I think that's why people clamored to you more than just what it was. They wanted to know, at least within the games, is it going to be done right? And a lot of people know that you would be the one doing it right.
Well, I appreciate that. I do what I do. The amazing thing is people say, how do I, when I talk to a lot of young people who want to get into the business, and they say, how do I be like you, Tony? And I say, you can't. You just be yourself. What I try to do, and I've always tried to do, obviously in the beginning of my career, I was just a raw young kid. I was 19 years old, and I was trying to find my way. I just wanted to sound good, do a good job, be professional in everything that I did. And so after 30, 40 years of doing this, and I was in the business almost 40 years when the Madden thing came along. And so I've been fortunate enough to be able to be myself. And when I'm reading a script or I'm reading things that are presented to me, the key is to not sound like you're reading something from a script, to sound like you're just talking with people. And I do that to this day on my Sirius XM show and any other things that I've been doing on Twitch, on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv, Tony Bruno Show. You can go on there and watch the show every day from our studios. And it's great to connect, because the thing about Twitch, and I'm sure you know this, Matt, is that the audience is right there live. So the interaction is happening instead of taking a phone call, which we also do. I can see the people who are listening to the show comment on everything that's said, either by me or the guest or one of the other folks on the show. So the interaction with people is the thing that I think I do best, because I'm not afraid to go out and mingle with people when we go out and do remote shows, whether it's Vegas or any other big event. I'm always there, and the fans, a lot of fans are wondering, wow, can I go up and say hi to them? And there's a lot of people in my business who think, wow, I'm not going to go be bothered by fans or talk to the people who help make me successful and still follow me and listen to what I do. So I've always been one to be with the people, because I'm one of the people. I've always thought of myself as, I'm not some big radio star and a guy that you can't approach. I just want to be the regular everyday guy, because that's what I've been my whole life.
So let me ask you, theoretically, if one of our independent games in the marketplace went to you and said, Tony Bruno, we have to find a way to integrate you into our product, Tony Bruno says yes to this, or he says no?
Well, I would obviously listen and see what it's about. Yeah, I mean, I'm not. It would probably have to be a sports game, and it doesn't even have to be a sports game. If somebody thinks that I can add something to their game, and again, to all the listeners, I am not begging for a job in a video game. Yeah, I'm just, if somebody calls me, and I've done voiceover stuff my entire career, so it's not like, but I don't go knocking on doors at this stage of my life to go knocking on doors and say, hey, you know what? Why don't you hire me to do your voiceovers? I used to do that, but I don't do it anymore at this stage of my career. So I've always been reluctant to go out and look for jobs, because I've been happy with what I've done. In fact, when I moved to LA and was on Fox Sports Radio doing the morning show with Andrew Siciliano, that's when that part of my career, because, when you live in LA, you got producers who roll out of bed in the morning and they're always looking for talent. And most of the major talent that you've heard on game shows and the Adam Carollas and the Jimmy Kimmels and all the guys who host game shows on television, they were all on radio in Los Angeles. And some producer would wake up in the morning and hear somebody and say, hey, I like that guy's voice. Let's go get him and see if he'll do a game show. And so that's what happened to me. I happened to be on in LA, syndicated nationally, but the people in LA and the people in Florida at the other EA complex were all listening to the show and said, hey, that's a great idea. Let's get Tony Bruno. If we're going to do a radio show, he seems like the guy. So I was fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. I had a national audience, and the people at EA Sports in both locations, out in Redwood City, California, and down in Florida, they all were in agreement that I should be the guy, and they all agreed that they liked what I do. And so they came after me, and we did a deal.
Well, I speak on everyone with the community when I say we loved what you did. We appreciate what it brought to the game, and we still to this day hope that something like that can be brought back. So I know we went over a little bit of the time we had today, so I really do appreciate having you on. It's so weird to have both my worlds kind of cross together here. I appreciate the time you gave me, how quickly we got the time together. Is there anything at the end? I will let you say whatever you want to the football fans listening to this.
No, I just hope we play football. It's my favorite sport. We do all sports. I cover all sports, but the NFL is king, and you can see just how people react. And with the COVID stuff, hopefully this ends. Hopefully the training camps work out okay, and hopefully we have football in the fall. The NFL has been the only league that has been fortunate to go through the Super Bowl. Nobody wanted to see the Pro Bowl, but then they got the draft. They got all this stuff, free agency done during this coronavirus pandemic, and now hopefully, as the testing increases and we're seeing more and more people test positive, just don't think of the testing positive as the end of sports. I know there's a lot of doomsayers out there. I try to look at it from a positive perspective. If guys are testing positive now, hopefully they're young enough and healthy enough, if they're athletes, that they'll be able to get over it and get better so that they can play in the fall. And guys who opt out, that's their decision. I'm not going to criticize players who don't want to go out there and risk anything. So I just want to see football. I want to see sports. Sports is my life. And the good thing about what I do is that even without sports, I'm able to do a 3-hour show every day and still try to have fun and stay involved with the people out there who listen to sports radio.
Do me one last favor. If someone heard this for the first time, hasn't heard you in 15 years, and they want to go listen to you today or right now, where would they go to do that, Tony?
Well, every Monday to Friday on Sirius XM 211, it's the Dan Patrick channel. I've been on there since March. They contacted me and said, hey, Dan Patrick's got his own channel. It's Dan Patrick, Rich Eisen, and we'd love to have you a part of it. So I said, absolutely. So I'm now a part of the Sirius XM channel 211, the Dan Patrick channel. Dan Patrick's on, then Rich Eisen, and I'm on from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern time, Monday to Friday, 3 to 6. And then they rerun it at night on SB Nation Radio, on terrestrial radio, on about 115 stations from 10 to 1. And then we reconfigure it to be an Into the Night show, which is the show that I used to do in Los Angeles. And then I mentioned the Twitch component. So you can watch the show, subscribe for free. You don't even have to pay to buy it. And if you have Amazon Prime, you get the Twitch show for free. So Twitch.tv, a lot of gamers know that channel as well. Tony Bruno Show, and go on there and watch me. So there's 3 ways to listen to the show and even watch the show if you're still interested on what I'm doing these days. And I appreciate the opportunity to tell everybody what's going on these days.